Hello again, Struck. Well, today I'm bringing you my What the Struck is UnDungeon video, which is kind of my first impressions after playing the game for 4 days. I've managed in that time to complete my first dimension and have started completing the second one. I think that I've got enough information to share about the game and what it can offer to make it clear whether it's your kind of game or not after watching that video. So buckle up, I hope you enjoyed, and let's go. The thing I always start those videos with is the story of the game. What is the background? Well, you are the Herald. The Herald, which is kind of like a very powerful being. I don't want to spoil too much. There has been something like they call it the shift, as the voiceover says in the game, which pretty much caused a bunch of dimensions to crash, and now it's up to us to do stuff with those dimensions, to rewrite reality and things like that. Pretty cool stuff, to be honest, in terms of background to the story. So what the gameplay loop will be is, you start in a certain dimension called the Q dimension, and then you need to activate 7 piers. Every pier you activate unlocks a certain part of the dimension, which will unlock new quests and new main missions, side missions, etc., new zones to explore. It expands in certain rings. There's like the dimension is separated in certain rings, and every pier is a certain ring. Starting from the center, going outwards, you expand that dimension. And once you have activated those 7 piers and you do certain things which I don't want to spoil, then you decide the fate of this dimension, and eventually you start a new one, and then you do that same loop again. But how do you activate piers? You activate piers by, first of all, you activate the piers itself, but then to use the pier you need to find the core. And every pier has a corresponding core. You have to either talk to locals to find out where the core is, or extort the information from them. In general, you would need a core for every pier, and once you get the core, you bring it back to the pier, and it's time for the next pier. Pretty simple and nice loop. And the first dimension was desert, the second one was kind of like jungle marshlands. I'm wondering how many of those will be, and whether it will be just an endless loop, which is not a bad thing in itself. But yeah, I think the story and the background is pretty solid. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the combat. It's pretty fast and fluid, and you have 3+3 abilities at your disposal, as well as a consumable, which could be buffs, healing, etc. You have knives, blades, daggers, etc. And you have bombs, which also has healing bombs in there, so you have to be careful. Some bombs are just roots, the buffs, others do damage, and others are just a healing bomb. With the knives, I haven't found a healing knife. Obviously you can't throw a knife at you. That's why there isn't one that heals. Overall, with the first weapon, which is gauntlet, claw, whatever, a main hand weapon, you have your left click attack and the hold left click ability, which could be an attack, or it could be a debuff, or it could be a buffing area that gives you a bonus while you stand inside it. Then you have the shield, which is your defensive stuff, where normally if you do right click you can block an attack. It's different effects depending on what shield you have equipped. And then if you hold it, holding left click for a few seconds and releasing, would give you different bonuses. Sometimes it would let you get a buff for damage. Sometimes it would get you the ability to block the next 3 attacks, and so on. There are a few of those, but basically you have right click, hold right click, left click, hold left click, and then there's spacebar, your helmet, which is normally the movement ability, and you dodge. There's short range, medium range, etc. dodges with spacebar depending on the helmet that do different things, and then with holding space there are various options. One option would be to dodge at a certain distance and leave a bunch of mines behind you. The other one would be to dodge and charge at the enemies, I think. And there's another one that's just to dodge and that gives you movement speed and so on. So yeah, whether it gives you movement speed, whether it leaves mines, it is the hold space button. So we can say there's 9 crucial buttons here. There's also shift that lets you pause. When you press shift, this menu opens up and it lets you choose. If I press R, it keeps rotating which consumable goes into R. If I press E, it rotates which throwable blade, dagger, knife, etc. Goes into E. If I press Q, keeps rotating the bombs. As you can see, this one heals and the rest do damage. It's indicated there. The same goes for those. It shows you which heals, which is a buff, and so on. You can also rotate your weapons by pressing the main left click, right click, etc. As you can see, let's rotate it here just to show you once. And the same goes for the right click and the space. You can rotate and change gear as you go. It pauses the game and then it resumes once you release it. And yeah, that pretty much is it about the combat. It's very fun, very dynamic, fast-paced, and it allows a lot of experimentation. In terms of gear or equipment layers, there are 3 major sources of power that you get. One of them is your core, and the core, by the way, is an organ. More about organs in a moment. The core is where you have various types of runes and various types of nodes. Keep in mind, nodes can be upgraded, whereas runes are basically the stronger the one you find, the better. But you cannot upgrade them, you cannot merge them. At least so far I haven't found an NPC that lets me merge runes. Whereas I have found NPCs that let me merge nodes. There are various types of nodes: attack, defense, nature, luck, and gloom. And different cores have different combinations of slots. Some nodes would have less rune slots than others, but more of the other slots. Some nodes will have 0 luck, but they might have nature or defense. Some might have 0 gloom. Some nodes would have less attack, but more runes, or more attack but less runes and also defense and stuff like that. So you have to make use of the core that fits the way you want to play the game, whether you want to be more defensive or more offensive, whether you want to get some more double wood chance, and whether you want to get better discounts at the shop. But keep in mind, the discount at the shop seems buggy. So the things you buy from the shop are discounted, but the things you sell to the shop also get discounted. So it's pretty much the same stuff. If you sell something for 100 and you have a 10% discount, it will be sold for 90. If you buy something from 100 and you have 10% discount, it will also be sold for 90. So I think they fucked up there and made it affect both sides of the trade, not just the opponent's side, if you can call the NPC trader opponent. And that's it about the core. Quickly, I'm gonna just let you see some of the things those nodes give, so you can have an idea. You can feel free to pause if something catches your eye. But yeah, I think this covers most of the nodes in the game. Maybe there might be some that exist that are not in my inventory right now. But overall, this is pretty much the stuff you can expect. And as you progress through the game, the enemies will drop better stuff in terms of runes. And in terms of nodes, you have to find an NPC that lets you combine them and merge them. and merging 2 might 1 will give you might 2, and might 2 gives you, I think, 3.6, and then you can get 2 might 2 to get might 3, and eventually 2 might 3 to get might 4, which is might 4 is 4.4, and might 1 is 3.0. So that kind of gives you an idea of how nodes and the core works. As I mentioned, the core is an organ, and there are various types of organs. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different types of organs, which are skin, brain, eyes, heart, social organ, main gland, core, digestive system, and movement apparatus. And those are craft only. Wow, you can find nodes and runes. Organs are craft only. You start with some basic ones, and there are different types for every type of organ, different varieties of brains, of skin, of heart, and so on. They would all give you different bonuses, and those you craft. And as I mentioned, dimensions would be different. So where the crafting machine is in one dimension might not be the same in the next one, but just to give you some look at the recipes, to give you an idea. On the side, on the right hand side, you should be seeing stuff. I cannot show you the blocked recipes, but there's one I haven't discovered here, 3 more to discover here, 2 more to discover there. And yeah, it's pretty good what one can do when they consider the organs. And you're probably seeing something here that says first organ to be destroyed. What does that mean? Well, every time your HP goes to 0, you lose an organ. In fact, I have lost one and I didn't realize it. Earlier when I was recording footage of the game, I lost an organ. I had 6, but it tells me I have 5. And actually I do have 6. Not sure why this one says 5 here. It used to say 6 there. So every time you lose HP and it goes to 0, it destroys an organ, and it's like an extra life. You lose that organ, it gets destroyed, but then you get the other organs to be your next life. So you should have 6 organs giving you 6 lives. If you have 9 organs, that's 9 lives, 9 extra lives, which is pretty solid, to be honest. But it's also shitty. It's also shitty because organs are super expensive to craft, and you have to grind a lot if you want to recraft a certain node. So you have to be careful. If you, like me, hate losing organs and don't want your HP to ever go down to 0 on any HP bar, then you have to play careful, and it gets a little boring because of that whole reason. Because if organs would cost 30, 40, even 50% of what they cost, it would be a little more fun in the game, because you wouldn't feel like organs are that fucking important to preserve, because they're replaceable, but the game makes it super difficult to replace, and that's not great. If they're expendable, they should be priced as an expendable thing, not cost you, well, I was gonna say cost you a kidney and your firstborn son, but I guess kidneys are an organ as well. But yeah, I think that's one of the things the game needs to improve, reducing the prices in resources needed to craft an organ. The next layer of equipment is your weapon, shield, and mask. As I mentioned, every one of those has main ability and second hold ability, where the main is pressing the button, the second is holding the button. Left click, right click, spacebar. They have different abilities. Obviously this one gives you more offensive stuff. They all have different behaviors. The same goes for the shields. Different behaviors, different stats. Some of them give more stats, others give less stats in terms of stats, or in terms of how many affixes there are. It's up to you to find your preferred choice, whether you want to stack HP, whether you want to go for a chance to summon and summon strength, or whether you want to go for armor, or whether you want to go for absorption, whether you want to go for stamina regeneration, whether you want to go for more maximum damage or for more minimum damage, more armor piercing, and so on. Keep in mind, it's logical to keep your maximum damage higher than the minimum damage. I got myself something new that I want to use. Where did I put it? This one. But if I were to use this, my minimum damage will become bigger than my maximum damage. That would mean if I equip this, I would have to rework my my runes, and I would have to remove some of the minimum damage runes and put one more at least maximum damage rune. So let me show you how that works. For example, if I were to equip this, now I'm 771 minimum, 733 maximum. Okay, this, as I mentioned, is easy to solve. Removing the lowest minimum, which is 25, and putting some maximum damage, which the best one I have is this one, 61. And now we're 680, 841. Or I could remove this one and just put some extra HP. Keep in mind, you also have to pay attention to certain synergies. This brings us to synergies. As I mentioned, those are important to decide what build you have. This one tells you every 2 health runes gives you 10% minimum damage. So I have 4 health runes. That means I have 20% minimum damage added to the build as a result of those. There are other things that would give you, for example, based on certain organs, you would get bonuses depending on the runes or nodes that you are using. I guess the best place to check is over here. For example, each active rune, 1 to swarm, each power node, 10 maximum HP, each wife node, 50 minimum damage on loss of organ, 100% HP restored, and so on. Every 2 strength runes, 10% critical damage. That's kind of how things work. So hopefully this is clear in terms of build diversity and synergies. A very important place in the game is the hub. It contains all sorts of NPCs. First you have, for example, an NPC like this one where you can trade. You get this, you get, for example, one thing and it has a value. This one costs 207, so I have to find items that cost just as much to be able to buy it. Every dimension would have certain things that cost more than others. I would suggest using those instead of using the basic ones that don't cost much per unit, because they would just end up clustering. They would end up clustering the inventory of the NPC, and eventually the NPC won't be able to take any more materials when you trade with him. So you get to equal or slightly higher value and then strike a bargain. Keep in mind the trading stat is booked, and if an item here costs 100 and I have minus 20%, it will cost 80. But if an item I can sell costs 100 and I have 20% trading stat, it will also make my item cost 20% less. I don't think this was intended. Another NPC, this guy. Here you craft cores. I had a flaming core, and then at the end of the video I'm using a nation core which I crafted. Then you have something like this NPC, which only unlocked in my second dimension. This is an NPC that lets you craft weapons, shields and helmets. Right now it's only selling Architech, and Architech gear seems to be strange. It's gear without stats, and even if you equip it, it doesn't give you any bonuses, like a set bonus. It would have been nice if at least it gave set bonuses. So yeah, that's kind of it. You see, you start with the clear lips, but I don't know why the Architect seems kind of useless right now. To me, at least, it's useless. Maybe there's something in the game later that makes it useful. Another thing is the machine where you craft organs. Let's craft this eye. Boom, new eye. And now we have this eye here. We can equip it, and we have extra stats. Keep in mind, organs require certain specific materials which are very hard to find, so make sure you don't lose them. Then there's this NPC here. He repairs equipment. Equipment repairs cost essence. Keep that in mind. Only repair when a gear is something that you know you would be using for a long time, and when it's close to breaking. The closer it is to breaking, the more repair will cost, but if it's worth it, it's good to do it, obviously. Then we have this machine which pretty much lets you salvage materials for resources. Certain amount of materials is needed. This one requires 10, others would require less or more, and you get things like minerals, energy gems, sometimes energy cores, etc. So only dismantle when you really need to. And something else that I only got in my second dimension, it's a machine that lets me fuse nodes. In the first dimension you would meet an NPC that lets you do that, but basically you put two nodes that are the same type and the same rank level, and then you pay essence again and you get something of the stronger version. Don't overdo it, because if you have for example 4 slots of attack 1 nodes socketed, and then you get a 5th one and you upgrade one, that's fine. But if you keep upgrading all of them and you end up with just one more, you would one attack that's level 3 for example, you would be losing DPS, so keep that in mind. And one thing we've missed is the one that lets you craft medicine, medkits, medpacks, stealth packs, and grenades, 3 types, and knives. Probably more will be unlocked later. It also costs essence, so I wouldn't recommend using this much unless it's a big emergency. And that's it about the hub. There's also important main quest NPCs here, so keep that in mind. Now there's one more mechanic connected to your hub, and this is the primordial matter and those bridges. As you see on the map, there are boxes. Right now there's 10 boxes that I can loot, and each one of those bridges that leads to a box costs primordial matter. But primordial matter is also very important for, at least in the first dimension, in the Q dimension you needed 7 of those to build an arc. And sure, you can use them here to make bridges and to get to wood boxes, and those wood boxes would give you some stuff like essence, like shard of foundation, spirit spark, etc. And it's not bad to get to those, but you shouldn't overdo it, especially in the first dimension. It might be a little bit slower to get enough of those primordial matter cubes. Right now I've been saving up, I've been buying from the NPCs that let me buy some of those, so I have plenty. And yeah, you can just open boxes, and in the first dimension you need to use some of those primordial matters to reach certain NPCs. For example, the machine used for crafting organs in my first dimension was up down here, actually, down here. So this machine here was past this bridge, so I needed to make this bridge before I can reach that machine and the NPC that stays next to it. But in this dimension all the NPCs, since it's my second one, just appeared in the middle, so I didn't need to unlock bridges to reach those NPCs. Now there's a little bit of extra information that I think would be useful. Let's say you have a new core. Let's say you just crafted this core and you want to level it up. There are various ways to level it up. One way would be obviously to use essence. I mean, you need to use essence, but one of the ways would be to use the essence packs from boxes that you find in the base, and do it like that. So the other way to farm experience, and which is essence is the experience in this game for your core, if you have a new core, or in general if you just want to get stronger before continuing with your quests, is this world big map. You need to look for those red NPCs. You go to one of them, and that should initiate a fight. Obviously they sometimes sleep during the night, but if you get near them you can fight them, and that's a free fight, and they're endlessly gonna be there. At the beginning of my second dimension there weren't any up until I reached like the third one. So you see, that's a fight, and those would reward you, and sometimes there might be even boxes that you can loot in those. Obviously right now I'm getting destroyed because I'm with a new node without all my stuff, and I just played it badly and I lost a bunch of organs, but that's how it will be. You beat those, you loot the stuff, you get the essence from the kills, and everyone is happy. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of the game. I'm starting with the pros as usual. First, there's a lot of maps / points of interest, which are kind of places to explore on the big map, and as the dimension grows, so does the number of those places. And since there's multiple dimensions, that further expands the explorable zones. The camera is isometric, some love it, some don't. I love it. There's a decent combat system, it's fluid, it's nice. Another thing I like. There's also amazing visual effects, sound effects, and the soundtrack top notch there. There's amazing, actually, let's not say amazing, but solid gear diversity. And I would also say another thing that's a bonus is that the choices, some of them matter. Who you take with you to the next dimension, who you save, who you kill, and so on. It affects the world one way or another before the world gets destroyed and the new world starts. There's also a decent crafting system, not amazing but good enough. Now, in terms of cons, there are two things that stand out to me. Maybe there's more, but those two really made an impact. First, the atrociously bad saving system. It feels forced, it feels terrible, it wastes your time. The only way you can save is to get to your hub or to get to a mirror. And if you haven't visited a mirror in a long time, when you die you have to redo everything you've done until then. The best way to make it is to remove the fucking mirror system, it's useless, and to make it so every time you enter a zone it auto-saves. If you die you start this zone from the beginning. It's not perfect, but at least it's better. And on top of that, if they add a quick save, quick vote, manual save, manual vote system, it's also nice on top of the auto saving when you enter a new zone. Now, there's also, as I mentioned, terrible pricing of the organs. Organs are supposed to be something expendable, something that's like your extra HP bars, and if you die you're supposed to lose organs to save yourself and get a second HP bar and third and so on, but they don't cost as much as something expendable will. They are very expensive and it's very grindy if you want to replace an organ that you've just lost. So the system is kind of not working the way they wanted it because of the terrible resource requirements to craft new organs. And that's the two cons of the game that stand out to me. Sure, there are minor bugs and glitches, but that's negligible, and they would fix the bugs and glitches, whereas completely redesigning their game, I don't see that ever happening. If you wanna watch more content like this one, there's a bunch on my channel. And if you want to get notified when I upload new stuff for this game, for others, in general, build videos, etc., and you don't want to miss the notifications when I upload, you can subscribe and hit that button with the bell if you want to. Keep in mind, another thing that exists on YouTube is memberships. Memberships are a monthly payment that can be cancelled at any time, and this gives you special things such as emotes that you can use in chat under videos and during live streams, as well as you get badges that indicate how many months you have been a member for. additional thing for members is I offer optional opt-in tutorials. So you can contact me if you're a member, and I can arrange a time and meeting place such as Discord, where I can give you video tutorials for the basics, the most basic stuff of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere, or After Effects. Thanks again, Strakop, for watching this video up until the end. Keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.